BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Andy Burke and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Tuesday the 12th of August. And Rangers are on the cusp of the Champions League playoff round.
We can't get too emotional about the outcome. We'll get emotional about the process and the intention, but not the outcome. We'll get better, and tonight is a different challenge again, and it's one we're looking forward to.
Can Russell Martin's side keep up their European form against Viktoria Plzen? And another Scot seems to be on the way to Serie A.
I quite like the fact that he's leaving Scotland. He's going abroad. He's going to try and broaden his horizons and test his skills in a different league against different players. I think it's really exciting for him.
Lennon Miller on the brink of a move to Udinese, and Aberdeen look to strengthen what has been a powder puff attack.
Obviously they're talking about Lazetic. I think we're impossible to say whether that's going to be the solution or not. So from Aberdeen's perspective, they are really hoping desperately that he brings them something there.
We'll have all that and look at the latest transfer news coming up on the podcast.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Right, plenty coming up, so stay with us. Delighted to have your company. Delighted to have the company of Scott McDermott, Daily Record senior sports writer, out in Pilsen with Rangers. Scott, how is it out there? Give us a sense of how things are building up ahead of this evening for Rangers.
It's a great place, Andy, I have to say. Fairly small, pretty quiet at the moment. I mean, I think Rangers have only got 700 tickets. I think most of the fans have probably stayed in Prague rather than coming through to Pilsen. So it's fairly quiet, but at the press conferences yesterday, so we're getting a kind of feel for it, both managers talking about the game. It's been really good so far.
Not as warm as Athens a couple of weeks ago, I hope.
No, certainly not. But still nice and sunny. Probably sunnier than back home in Glasgow, that's for sure.
Well, good morning, Scott, and good morning to Rory Loy, former Rangers, Dundee and Falkirk striker. Rory, how are you getting on?
Good, thanks, Andy. Good.
They've put themselves in a great position, Rory, in this tie, a 3-goal lead heading to the Czech Republic.
They have. Very Rangers-like. Great position in Europe. Poor position domestically. It's just wash, rinse, repeat at the moment, isn't it? So, I thoroughly expect that we'll get through tonight. Whether it's perfect or not, I'm not quite sure. We'll wait and see how they perform. Sometimes it's difficult to predict exactly how Rangers perform. More often than not, in Europe, they perform pretty well, and with a 3-0 buffer, I just don't see anything other than Rangers qualifying. It's just how they qualify I'm not sure about just yet.
Yeah, Scott, these twin personalities of Rangers in European action and domestically is a long-running problem, and we saw some evidence of that on the weekend again against Dundee.
Yeah, it certainly did, Andy. I mean, it's difficult to fathom, difficult to explain. As Rory said, it's a big European night tonight, so you don't doubt they'll turn up and play quite well away from home. They've been good in Europe the last few seasons, but it's domestically where they've got big issues. And as you say, that was evident again on Saturday, miles away from where they need to be. It'll be interesting tonight just with that 3-0 scoreline, because you just wonder if there might be a kind of tendency to ease off slightly. It's very rare that they get into a second leg with three goals up. It'll be interesting to see if the manager makes changes. But no, you're right, the kind of contrast between domestic performances and European performances is quite striking. But how long have we been saying that for now? And it has to, the domestic performances and results have to improve, and they have to improve quickly for the manager and these players.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it against Motherwell at Fir Park in the Premiership opener, Rory, and Russell Martin didn't hold back in the aftermath of that in his criticism of the players, and he got the response he wanted against Pilsen in the first leg, and he's maybe thinking, right, the message is that the penny's dropped with these guys. This is the standard, and must have been so frustrating for him to see them then take another step backwards on the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, history will tell you that that's what Rangers have done for a number of years now. So Russell Martin, I think, I was angry after the Motherwell game because he wanted to buck the trend. He wanted to be the different one. He wanted to come in and make the difference domestically. And then when he sees that pattern starting to emerge again, I think he took that opportunity to tell what he felt were some home truths. But I do think Russell Martin, I said when he got the job, if he's going to try and, out-football Brendan Rodgers to try and, wrestle this title away from them, then for me there's only going to be one winner, and that's Brendan Rodgers. He's got a settled squad. Yes, he needs to add to the squad, but he knows what he's doing. He's the best coach in the league. For me, Russell Martin needs to swallow his principles ever so slightly in the short term to get results, to stay in touch, and then slowly but surely try and build his way of playing into it. Because listen, see if he tries. Because see against Dundee on Saturday, Andy, they were so passive. The ball was moved so slowly. So, I couldn't really see. Yes, they passed the ball well, but I think John Souttar had a ridiculous amount of passes compared to some of the other players in the team, which tells its own story. So, I think Russell Martin needs to take a wee look and go, right, what is the best way for me to get results domestically? Because it might not be this pass, because they need to keep in touch with Celtic, because if they go 7, 8, 9, 10 points behind, they're done. Celtic will not drop that amount of points over the course of a season. They've proven that they don't do it. So, yeah.
Andy, that's what worries. I totally agree with Rory. That's what worries me slightly about Russell Martin. He said when he came in the door that obviously he was going to try and implement a new style and change the culture and change the mentality. There was like a seismic change at the club over the summer with a new ownership. But he admitted that he knew he had to do that while getting results. That was going to be the key. And I know we're only 2 games in, but so far they've proved that they can't do that. They can't implement this change while winning games that they should be winning. Let's not beat about the bush. Dundee and Motherwell, first 2 games, it was a kind start for Rangers in terms of the fixtures. And to have not won a game yet, and as Rory touched on, if this St Mirren game gets postponed with Rangers in the playoff round, their next Premiership game will be against Celtic, and if they were to lose that, and I know it's hypothetical, but to potentially go 10 points behind Celtic by the end of August, I think it's just disastrous for the manager and the fans. The fans were really angry on Saturday. 2 league games in, it was getting toxic at Ibrox already, between the performance, some of the substitutions, some of the decisions. Honestly, if they were to lose that Celtic game, and I know it's a work in progress, and it's a long-term plan for Russell Martin, but you just don't get that here. You just don't get it in Glasgow. And Rory's right. He has to find another way of getting results, because we spoke to Jack Butland last night, who spoke very well again, and he was right. He said, Rangers results come above everything else. If results aren't there, nobody cares how you're playing. So it's going to be interesting the next wee while whether you see a slight change. But Russell Martin has to be careful. Even some of the things he's saying, like last night, for instance, he said, we're unbeaten in 5. Fans just don't want to hear that. They just do not want to hear that when that includes a couple of draws against Dundee and Motherwell. So it's he's just got to be careful. He needs results domestically, and he needs them quick.
Yeah, I remember interviewing Philippe Clement after Celtic beat Rangers 3-0 last season, and he said along the lines of, well, you're forgetting our best result in 4 years last week against Ross County when we won 6-0, and you're right, Scott, things like that would worry you a little bit in terms of knowing how that sort of thing will go down with the Rangers support, who of course are so demanding. There was a couple other things in that press conference last night, Rory. Russell Martin talking about Nico Raskin perhaps maybe having his head turned by links to other clubs in the summer. And of course he said after that Motherwell game some players needed to drop their egos, and then Nico Raskin's dropped for the home leg against Pilsen, and maybe people putting 2 and 2 together. But these are the kind of distractions when you're trying to implement a new style and get the team winning. This is the sort of stuff you could be doing without.
Yes and no. This is run of the mill stuff for a manager at this time of year. Now, if Nico Raskin is a difficult character and he's not handling it in the most professional manner, then that can be difficult. But at the end of the day, there'll be players up and down the country, every club, who are having their head turns by potential transfers and looking to get out of the club, and managers just need to deal with that. That's why Russell Martin's there. That's his role at the club. It's not just to implement the tactics, and it's to manage a squad of people. And if Nico Raskin's got interest from elsewhere and he's not handling that particularly well, then it's up to Russell Martin to do the best he can to get the best out of Nico Raskin. So whether he's decided to have a little pop, and people have decided it may have been about Nico Raskin, then he's dropped him. If he feels that's the best way to get a response out of Nico Raskin, then fair enough. It's pretty high risk, I would say. However, that's what he's decided to do. But when you're saying it's not ideal, I mean, that is football at this time of year, and it'll be the same at every other club up and down the country. And for me, I know Jimmy Tillene had an issue with Duke last year when he never turned up when he was trying to get out. That for me is how you deal with it. You don't draw attention to yourself. You don't draw negative attention to yourself. Russell Martin's decided to approach it in a different manner, but yeah, in terms of him not being ideal, I think ideal would be having a bid for Nico Raskin at £12-15 million if they can get it. So it's Russell Martin's job to manage that so that bid comes along at some point.
Well, as long as the window's open, the transfer rumours will continue. The latest name linked with Rangers, Real Betis defender Nobel Mendy, looks like he might be on his way to Ibrox. Scott, what do we know about that move, and what sort of player Rangers might be getting?
Yeah, mate, it looks as if it's close to getting done, Andy. He's a 20-year-old left-sided centre-back who hasn't played a lot of games. I mean, I think he did play in the Conference League semi-final last year, but I think he's maybe only played two La Liga games for Betis. So, I mean, in terms of Rangers, Russell Martin said last week that he wants more leaders in the squad. I'm not sure if a 20-year-old is going to come into that dressing room and start leading people. However, he probably does need a left-sided centre-back. I think they want four centre-halves. Obviously, John Souttar's contract situation is a slight issue as well, with less than 12 months to go. So, look, he seems to have the right kind of profile. Mendy, he looks physically strong. So he looks as if he might suit Scottish football. Is that position a real priority for Rangers right now? I'm not so sure. I mean, I think a striker and a left back, potentially another midfielder, might be more of a priority. But he's building a squad, and it looks as if Mendy's going to be the next one to come in. But again, a young player with potential, maybe not that experienced kind of leader, character, personality that I think the fans are kind of crying out for to get into that dressing room.
Well, just looking at tonight, Rory, obviously Rangers did a real good job on Plzen at Ibrox. Oliver Antman and Jedi Gassama on the wings, absolutely electric that night. Do you see big changes from the first leg in terms of personnel, in terms of approach to finish the job tonight?
It's a difficult one to call. I think if they had a routine win against Dundee at the weekend and had taken the 3 points and everything had went well, probably would have seen a good few changes, because Plzen will need to open up at some point, and that'll play right into Rangers' hands. I don't see a scenario tonight where Rangers don't score a goal. But the problem Russell Martin's got is if they go out there and they don't perform particularly well and don't even win, I think just with what's gone before in the last couple of weeks, it may start to have a negative impact if that's going to continue. They then potentially don't play for another week, given that the St Mirren game, they play Alloa at the weekend, and then may not play for a wee while again. So he needs to get the dynamic right between playing a team tonight which is going to do the business, but do it in a professional manner, because you can't afford another poor performance going into the weekend, because they've got to get by Alloa in the cup at the weekend as well. And given the cup campaign last year in the Scottish Cup, no guarantees at the moment with Rangers.
Certainly not. Well, big one for Rangers tonight against Viktoria Plzen, leading 3-0 for the first leg. You can hear live commentary on Sports Sound on BBC Radio Scotland, and we mentioned Philippe Clement. Don't forget, you can hear A very honest chat from the former Rangers manager in the latest episode of Sacked in the Morning. You can find that on BBC Sounds. Right, another Scot appears to be heading for Italy. Lennon Miller reportedly having a medical with Udinese. Rory, Lennon Miller has been linked with moves away from Motherwell for a long time. We wondered if he might stay in Scotland with Celtic or Rangers, try his luck down in England. It looks like he's heading to Serie A. What do you make of this potential move?
Well, in the modern game, with data and analytics and the way people try and recruit players, it's almost kind of tick box rather than actual watching them. And Lennon Miller must tick every single box and every single person's sheet. Very young, he's 18 years old. He's played over 70 first team games. In the middle of the pitch, he's a good height. So I'm not surprised there's been so much interest in him, and he's technically very gifted as well. So I spoke to Lee, his dad, at a Scotland under-21 game last year. We were playing France at the Falkirk Stadium, and I got the impression that going abroad would have been Lennon's, whilst they didn't give too much away, would have been Lennon's first choice. So it doesn't surprise me that he's on a plane out to Udinese, and I would imagine that deal will get done at some point, and hopefully can go and have the impact on Serie A, which our other Scottish players have had in recent years. Yeah,
I mean, Scott, it's been incredible to see the Scottish influence in Serie A in the last few years. Obviously, Scott McTominay, the headliner, who's got himself a Ballon d'Or nomination off the back of it, but plenty others, Lewis Ferguson and others. I suppose the hope, as Rory says, is that Lennon Miller can go and have a similar impact.
100%. I mean, as you say, guys like Aaron Hickey, Lewis Ferguson, even Liam Henderson, going back a wee bit, who's still over there. They've kind of set this trend, and then obviously Billy Gilmour and McTominay have gone over there and carried it on. I mean, I think it's a great move for Lennon Miller. He's going to a good, well-established kind of Serie A club. I think Udinese get about 20. I think the stadium holds about 25,000. It's a step up for Lennon. It's obviously a big step up for Lennon Miller, but it's one that you feel that he'll be able to take because his ability, because his attitude. Personally, I mean, I'm still staggered that Rangers or Celtic haven't pushed the boat out to try and get Lennon Miller. And I agree with Rory. I think probably, and I've spoken to Lee myself, I think Lennon's, I think he did want to go abroad and go and try it. I think he has looked at other players, and he just feels that's the right step at this stage in his career. But I think for the money that's been talked about, 4.5 million in Motherwell, as I say, I'm really surprised that Celtic or Rangers haven't been all over it and trying to convince him to stay in Scotland, because I think he's a top player at 18. Huge potential, knows the league, as Rory says, already played a number of games. So it surprises me. And I think most people on the outside will say, look, it's a brilliant move. He should go to Italy. He should try something different. Following on for these boys we mentioned. But I'm just really surprised that the old firm haven't tried to get him.
Well, let's look at some of the other transfer stories doing the rounds. Aberdeen look to be closing in on the Serbian striker Marko Lazetic to bolster an attack that is yet to score a goal in the league, Rory. It was particularly evident at Tynecastle, the lack of threat that Aberdeen carried up top, and it's been a bit of an issue for a while. Do you think this signing might be the man to resolve that problem for Jimmy Tillene?
Listen, I'm not gonna come on here and pretend I know everything about Lazetic, but they do need to add to their squad. Don't get me wrong, it was a very tough start going away to Hearts with the summer they've had, and then going and playing Celtic. It's tough. However, this time last year they were competing against absolutely everybody and had a fantastic start. And I think with the time Jimmy Tillene's had to invest in the squad and spend pre-season with them, with no European distractions to date, I think he'll be disappointed with the start. And Yengi does not really look like the answer at this moment in time. He hasn't scored any goals last season. doesn't look like he's particularly going to catch fire anytime soon. So, look, if Lazetic can come in and add to the squad, and they've got a track record of signing, Papagay, as much as he was maligned, did have a decent year last year when he played, scored goals. Miovski, of course, we all know, did very, very well. So they'll be hoping Lazetic can continue that trend, because they desperately need somebody at the top end of the pitch to put the ball in the net, that's for sure.
Just one other story to cover off, and that's Jim Goodwin, Scott, said to be in talks over a new deal at Dundee United, and they'll be very keen to keep him. There's suggestions that maybe clubs down south might be looking at the work he's done at Tannadice, and he's done pretty well after that disappointing spell at Aberdeen to come back to another big club and kind of rebuild his reputation.
He has. He's done really well. Topped off obviously with that brilliant result in Vienna last week against Rapid in Europe. The fact that they're even in Europe, we're talking about that, tells you how good Jim Goodwin's been at Dundee United. And you're right, from what I gather, there is a bit of interest in him now. I think I'm right in saying he's getting to the last year of his contract, so that's no surprise. And given kind of Dundee United's kind of recent history with a lot of managers and a bit of upheaval, I think if you asked most United fans, they'd be desperate to get Jim Goodwin tied up on a longer term deal, so they can kind of continue on this journey. So no, he's done a great job, and hopefully that will get settled and he gets a new contract because he deserves it.
Well, guys, pleasure to have your company this morning. That's all we've got time for. Many thanks to Rory Loy and Scott McDermott. Thanks to you at home for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. And don't forget to tune in to Sports Sound this evening for live coverage of Viktoria Plzen versus Rangers in Champions League qualifying. But for now, from all of us here in the Scottish Football Podcast, thanks for listening.
It's petty, it's ill-informed.
Are President Trump's cuts having an adverse effect on research?
It's pandemonium.
What number's that in the periodic table?
PD, number 47. I don't know.
I've done the shooting clays before. The longer you do it, the shorter obviously it gets.
When Craig said there he'd been shooting the clays, I imagined him out the back line. Somebody's washing,
William Shatner, his secretary, contacted me to say, when Bill has a question now and again, can he contact you? And then one time he called me up and he wanted to know, David, what is a photon? I'm thinking, this is incredible. Captain Kirk wants to know what a photon is,
I once met a guy who referred to a globe as a bomb app. A bomb app.
Look at the bomb app.
What we normally do is spin the bomb app and we see where we go on holiday.
The Off the Ball Podcast, available every Monday on BBC Sounds.